I'll bring up the
Hel-
PowerPoint.
Hello, everyone. This is Anna Hildrer, and I coordinate the North Central Texas Caregiver Teleconnection. This session today will address the very real issues of grief and loss and some of the things that come up during the holidays. Those of you that are caregivers and are listening in, the holidays can have a lot of joy in them, but they don't always have as much as we would wish because we're dealing with caregiving and some of the ongoing challenges of that. Our speaker today is Linda White. She's a professional chaplain, having served Texas Health Resources hospitals for 10 years and now over 8 years as bereavement coordinator with Heart to Heart Hospice in Fort Worth. She is a non-anxious presence offering compassion and hope. She is respectful of and understands the complicated nature of caring for a family member. She communicates a sense of value and strength to families in the midst of pain and uncertainty. She is one of 6 children with a large extended family, wife, mother, and grandmother of 2. She is trustworthy with a lot of sensitive, confidential, and complicated situation and understands the feelings of caregivers of being exhausted at times, feeling alone, conflicted, and powerless. Linda, thank you for joining us for a very important topic today.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you to Chantel.
Linda, you may want to turn off your phone so that there's no reverberation. Okay, now unmute yourself.
There you go. How's that?
Yes.
All right. I think we're going to.
Yes.
Will you close the door? Well, I'm very glad to be here and glad for technical assistance. Yes, I want to, first of all, affirm that those of you here listening are, I'm assuming, are primarily caregivers, and that is a hard job. And so so grateful for people like you who will give of themselves so generously. You know, that is, there's a lot involved with that. That's the first and foremost thing. I want to say that some people don't realize this distinction which Alan Wolfelt makes. Grief is what we feel on the inside, and mourning is when we take those feelings from the inside to the outside of us. So that's why we have a funeral. That's why people share with each other and those kinds of things. So that is part of our grieving process. Okay. So there are many kinds of losses. I guess I wanted to start with having you, I am kind of not going exactly with what I gave you on the outline. It'll be covered, but I wanted you to think for a moment, what was your first loss in your life? Was it a pet, not getting picked for the team you wanted in school? Most of us have had many losses through our lives, and that does inform how we handle loss today. And so I think it's helpful to think about that. I'm going to go.
And Linda, will you let us know when to change slides, please?
Well, I said I'm not really going by the slides, I guess.
Okay, that's fine.
Grief is definitely part of caregiving. There are so many things that we have to process and understand and negotiate. And I wanted to start with kind of the classic thinking about what grief is. It includes, well, there's 5 stages that we've used, and I've kind of pushed back against those, but now that I really understand that they're not intended to be stages, they do apply very much to almost everything. that we experience. So first is denial. We don't want to admit that we've had a loss. And so we push back, and that even, all of these things doesn't just impact our thinking, but our bodies, our emotions. Then we also have anger. There is a time for most people that we don't want what happened. And so we do push back. We try to figure out, why is this happening? I don't want this to be happening. But then the time can come that we bargain kind of with ourselves, maybe with God. If we're experiencing a loss, then that relationship was important to us, and we don't want them to be gone. We want to continue that connection and relationship. And we will talk about how you can continue that connection, but if they are declining, or if they have died, that changes how we relate to them and connect with them. And then some of us also deal with depression. Going through a time of disbelief or struggle and trying to reconcile our experiences with reality. And again, these don't apply, and not everyone is the same. Everyone's different, actually, on how they handle these things and whether or not they even deal with them. Most of us experience some of them here and there. At a point, we come to a reality and can acknowledge what has happened, even though that it feels like it's shattered our lives. We finally can come to the place where we acknowledge it, and then we can incorporate that knowledge into our experience. And there is actually a sixth stage now put out by David Kessler, who actually worked with Kubler-Ross on the first 5. And she gave her family gave him permission to write this sixth stage. And it's about making meaning from the death. Now, that does not mean the meaning of why the death occurred, but how it impacts you. How are you going to make meaning from this as a result of the death and into your own life? So what is the meaning of their death for my life? And I think that is a very, very appropriate next point. So I'm glad he was able to do that, because we all look for meaning, and it's very difficult if we can't find any. And this has helped to explain that more. We know that grief looks different for everyone. But there are some things that are very common. Usually there's physical things we experience, there's emotional things we experience, cognitive. One thing that I think a lot of us do, and everyone I think does this throughout their lives, but I think it's really important to point out, because I think it's one of the most important things in dealing with grief, and that is that if you push grief away, it will not be healed. You have to deal with it. So our makeup in our lives is to push away what hurts, what's hard, what we don't want. And so there you have why we push grief away, because we don't want it. But Alan Wolfelt says you must enter into your grief to move forward. You must move backwards in order to move forward in some ways, because we do have to allow ourselves to feel the pain. And I do think that the pain we experience, well, with caregiving, it could be yourself as the caregiver, or it could be the pain of the person you're caring for. And actually, that's kind of a double whammy in a way, because we have to consider that it could be either one of us dealing with trying to push that away. But the more honesty that we can bring, sensitive honesty that we can bring in our relationship with who we're caring for, will help us a great deal because we can't address important issues and how we're feeling, what we need, all those things. They can't be really addressed if we're not being honest. And that is very difficult when the truth hurts us. And so caregiving is a very difficult job, trying to balance that sensitivity with being honest and trying to come up with solutions and minimizing pain and all the things that come up. One thing that Alan Wolfelt talks about, and I think has really helped people, is the idea of grief bursts. So we can be going along feeling like we have some control, we're doing pretty well, and all of a sudden we're in a restaurant and a song comes on the radio and it's our song or it's their song, and it can feel like it comes completely out of left field, but it just is more than we feel like we can handle. So how we react is unique to each person. Some people would shed a tear, some would leave the room. You know, I don't know what it might be for you, but those are not, that does not say anything about you excepting that you're normal. We are all different, but we can be assured that things will catch us off guard. And that's kind of his way of identifying that we're in this journey together, but those things come out of the blue and are hurtful. And all we can do is try to be honest with ourselves and acknowledge that pain. And one thing I have found working with people and with my own life, I believe that joy and sorrow are sisters. They very, very often go hand in hand. Some of that has to do with honesty. Some of that has to do with just the complicated nature of so many things that they're, you know, you don't want to be so positive that you're not really looking at the difficult part. But when you are in the difficult, it really helps to acknowledge that there's joy in it too. And one of the main reasons is because whoever we're grieving or working with, we have a connection with. That connection and history and love is all why we're doing what we're doing when we're helping someone. And so when those grief bursts or those difficulties come up, it helps to keep that in mind, that we love this person and our goal is to help. So even in the difficult moments, we can look at that hopefully with some realism as well. So one of the questions is, so given how hard grief is, are there unique opportunities during the holidays to heal, to enjoy them? Can the holidays during this difficult time bring us closer to our loved one? And I believe, yes, that is possible. Now, every situation is different, and it doesn't mean it'll turn out the way you exactly want it. But if your goal is to work towards honoring whatever it is that they're able to do, you know, when someone has already died, we sometimes can look back at pictures and things that they used to love and remember those specific times. But when you are about to create those moments, we sometimes have to maybe modify what we're going to do or make a choice between this event and the other event. So all of that, if you can look at it with it's so easy to not know what the person that we're caring for, what they feel like they can handle, what's the most important to them, what wouldn't, if you didn't do this, it wouldn't be like the holidays. So it really tells us that we have to communicate as much as possible. And I will acknowledge sometimes there are situations where the communication from the one being cared for isn't as possible. But we can do everything we can, even if you have to have you probably have worked out a way to know how they respond when it's a yes. We have to do whatever we can to acknowledge that what they want and what they need is utmost here and alongside our own. But if you're trying to make it a great holiday season, then we need to err on the side of what they want to give their energy to. Sometimes it's limited. So again, that brings you into the point of pain and what is worth entering that in order to choose the best options for them and for yourself. So we don't want to, so let's go back to just for a minute, the idea of all the different ways that we have grieved over our lifetimes. How have you coped? What are the things that you have turned to make it through things that have been difficult? We could never find a one fits all, but perhaps within yourself and in your situations that you've faced, you can find some of the ways that have been most meaningful, maybe the least painful, but still pulling out the honesty and the meaning for you and who you are working with. So it's so easy to just think that everything's going to fall into place, but we know that that's not the case. And we want to just allow those sisters, joy and sorrow, to come together and do some compromising for the sake of the one that we're working with. So joy and sorrow come into the picture and helps us to make the best decisions possible. And even knowing that they probably won't come off the way you plan, but by planning, you have a lot better chance of having a couple wins in there. And those are the things that your person you're caring for will be able to hold on to and really give them the meaning that they're looking for in this time. Let's see. So also, of course, I'm sure you're aware of and thinking about self-care in here. And self-care is something for the person giving the care, and if it's possible for the person who is being cared for. Obviously every situation is different, but we have to have the strength to do what we commit ourselves to. And it seems that for most people, doing some practical ways to help us, to give us the strength, the energy, the emotional, whatever the word might be, the strength to do what we have promised to do. It's not an easy thing. Even, I don't know, maybe people in the field are the ones who don't do it the best, but I know that I have difficulty really setting aside time for self-care. And but it is so important. And I think one of the things that I've discovered is really, it is hard to be honest yourself. That this hurts me, but I still have a difficult time finding what replenishes me. And one of the things that I struggle with is I like to be able to do it all, and we can't. And so we have to set boundaries for ourselves, and we have to focus on the things that matter the most to us. And that can be also about what helps us. So meditate, some people meditation is very helpful for, and maybe that word is scary, but we can think about it as just reflecting what matters. Some of us need physical energy. We need to exercise. And again, that word is not one we like, but moving, if we can find a way that we can move that kind of recharges us in a way. You know, we want to think that we can have endless energy, but we don't. And so there's so many different ways to recharge yourself, but kind of have to find what works for you. The one thing that I really wanted to, I think I've already said once, but you know, to acknowledge that the things that are hard to admit. And I think that really takes a toll on us if we can't do that, because then we're kind of going around in circles. So we can actually work on a solution if we know what the problem is. So anyway, so we don't want to push it away. We want to connect with a friend or another family member when we can, or whoever it is that helps you feel centered and cared for and appreciated, respected, whatever it is that is what you need to continue to lead, care for someone, whatever it is that really fills you up. That's the person that you need. Maybe a lunch with somebody, you know, there's just all kinds of things that you can do. And depending on your situation, you can journal. I know journaling is one thing that helps me a lot. It all continually surprises me how much it helps, but it really does. Writing down how you're feeling about something. You don't have to have a profound anything, just putting your pen to paper. And sometimes I have been profoundly shocked at what came out of my pen. Oh, that doesn't bother me. Oh my goodness. Well, that's what did I just write? It just is difficult. And so for me, looking at the difficult sometimes and trying to come up with a solution helps me. Well, I mean, facing your things that are difficult. I have found the paper and pen has helped me a lot. Just being honest, it's a little easier through the pen than to speak honesty for me. So navigating the holidays and the special days, first of all, different days are more important to some people than others. So if you can only do one big event or a small event, but if you can only choose one thing, then it's important to really talk about what is the most important, and maybe kind of talking through some of the things that you recall that have been meaningful to you in your life or their life will help you come to recognize that. Is it the gathering with people? Is it going, you know, and sometimes it may be, you know, some of the things that you enjoy, you may not be able to go to anymore, but if you enjoy something that's on TV, or if it's about somebody coming to you, whatever that is, starting with what is the most important thing to you. And even if we can't do the whole shebang, what parts of that would be the most meaningful to you? I have found even as I've gotten older that things change for me, even that we used to do everything and now it's really not as important to do that. So I can imagine that if you're, providing care for someone that you would have to maybe limit what you can do, but doing even one or two things that just mean the world to you is enough. And that's one thing maybe to keep in mind as a caregiver is to say, this is important. It counts, and this is enough. I don't have to do it all. Okay, so, and I do want to say too that it is sometimes important even within yourself. Of course, sometimes it's not about just ourselves. We're working with someone or we depend on somebody for X. And so the decisions even that we make for ourselves may not be all about ourselves. It may be about what others need too in order for us to do our job. Sometimes we have to have help with caregiving, but maybe it's something personal that we need help with so that we can be a caregiver. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to acknowledge that you have a need as well as the needs of the caregiver, because you can't do it without help. Most people can't, at least. We have to depend on one another. So let me talk a little bit about some of the ways that you could choose to honor someone. I'm trying to kind of talk about people who are caregiving as well as people who may have lost a loved one. Modifying an event is one way to allow someone to come that can't do the whole thing like you used to do. But maybe you have pictures of the way you used to do it. Maybe you can look at some things that were meaningful to you and tell stories about why that's meaningful. And, oh, look, that person, I haven't seen them in how many years. And those kinds of things are very important to a lot of people. So it doesn't all have to be freshly this year. It can be how to share our memories. Maybe we need a prompt by looking at pictures, or maybe you as the caregiver can recall things and you can invite them to say, I remember when we did this. What did you love about that? And hopefully they're able to share that with you. Perhaps in the past you've made, a journal or something of who was there when and whose birthdays we did something special for. And it could also just be a time to be together. It doesn't have to even be about the holiday. It can be, I would really like to see Aunt Joe this year. And maybe it can't happen at the, the Thursday or the whatever the actual day of the holiday is. And maybe the holiday itself isn't the most important, but the people. And so how can we engage in those relationships with or without the ham on the table or whatever it is you choose for your meals. So there's lots of different things. One of the things that for someone who has passed and has died in the past, one of the things that we hear people talking about that's meaningful is doing something that they loved to do. And that in itself is a reminder, and it kind of carries on their legacy. I had one thing happen that I hadn't ever thought about until the moment I thought about it. And that was that my mother played organ and piano, and she used to go to nursing homes and play for their worship services and sometimes sing-alongs. And one day when I was doing a worship service at a nursing home, it just kind of hit me through the eyes. I'm doing what my mother did, and she would love this. And so just the idea that, first of all, you can be intentional, but sometimes you find yourself, oh, they influenced me. I'm doing the same thing, and they would be so happy. But even if you don't love it, you could donate a toy to someplace that honors a certain person, or it doesn't have to be a toy, of course, but something in someone's honor, or go do something. You don't have to choose it for an occupation, but if they love to do this, go give toys at Christmas. They always did that, and that organization would love it if you chose to kind of make it something about your loved one's legacy, that you would continue to do that in their honor. There's just all kinds of things. They don't have to be big either. But just thinking about the people that we have loved and thinking about who they were, what kind of connection it is that we have had with them, and honoring that in some way, whether it's ourselves or enabling others to do that. Let's see. So I just wanted to really affirm that caregivers make such a difference, and I'm very appreciative of people who are willing to do that. And I also wanted to mention that so grief is about joy and sorrow. And someone reminded me recently that, there's such a difference in how people handle a loss. And I can imagine it would apply to caregiving as well. But the things that someone had, their clothes, the collections that they had, everything that we're faced with when someone dies, or have to make room for caregiving even, we have to make decisions about some of those things. And I know there's conversation, when is the right time to get rid of things? And there isn't really a right answer. It depends on the person. But I did hear a grief specialist say recently that don't rush people to get rid of things, to give them away, even if they're going to a wonderful person or cause. The fact that those are in your home plays a role in your processing your grief. It reminds you that they're not here anymore. And that, for some people, is very important. You can't rush people. I know some of us try sometimes, but really it's not a good idea, because the things, like, I have many things in my home. Most of them are my husband's family, and they mean something to him, even though we can't use them. But I've thought about that, and I think this is part of the grieving process, and we don't have to minimize that, or that it's really important to keep that in mind, that this is the connection. It's not the only connection, because we are connected within us, and hopefully we acknowledge that regularly, but their belongings also do, and the situations that we find ourselves with. So we want to recognize that grief is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-time and done thing. It's a continued relationship. And anyway, again, I applaud you for being a caregiver, and all of this is trying to be as honest and just trying to be as honest as possible with yourself, with those that you are working with, that you love. And that's what we can do, and honor what you need as well as them. I think I'll stop there.
Linda, early on, we had a comment from Sharon to address the ambiguous loss. And she speaks specifically to her dad because of alcohol, and now my husband, who is living with Lewy bodies dementia, dealing with that ambivalent or ambiguous loss.
Yes.
You kind of let people know what you mean by that, what she means by that.
Well, yes, there are so many kinds of losses that are not easily defined, and those are some of them. And that is a very, very real concern with caregiving, because the person is still there, but they are not the same person because of illness, abilities. Their body is not able to do what they used to do. And yes, those are very important losses, especially for caregivers, because so that would fall under the topic of complicated grief. It could be multiple losses, but ambiguous grief is a loss that we've experienced. It's just not around a person. So yes, the declining ability of others is ambiguous. There's just so many ways that people, and that's very difficult to deal with, because most people can't even begin to comprehend all the pain that's associated with that. And so that's a very real, yes. And there's so many things that complicate regular grief as well. So yes, that is, and those kinds of things, especially, I encourage people to do whatever they can to have support and people walking alongside them, because that is so difficult.
And I would refer our listeners to, there is a recording at Teleconnection, and we had a session on ambiguous and anticipatory grief. And I would encourage our listeners to go back and listen to that particular Teleconnection. Have another question for you. How do we deal with the first holidays with the loss? The first holidays after a loss?
Yes.
Pointers about that.
Well, again, the first thing is to acknowledge the pain that you're feeling, and determine, I say this as if it's, you think about it, you can't necessarily come to determine, but yeah, think about what is it that about the holidays after that first loss, or the first holiday after that loss, what is it that is gnawing at you? Is it could be that it's something specific. They'll never be the one at the head of the table anymore. What do we do about that? So first of all, I would say, if there's something specific about the holiday, it'd be good to think about that, because the holiday is a big thing. So is it a specific aspect of it? And if that's the case, then first acknowledging that that's painful, and then thinking through, well, how can we honor his or her memory about that? Do you want to leave an empty seat at the table? Do you want to share the kind of thing that they would share? What is it that, so once you know what it is that feels like it'll be missing, in addition to the person themselves, sometimes that can help. You can either remember what they have done in that way, or you can do it yourself, as if in keeping on with their legacy for that. So I did have a couple things here with those kinds of things in mind. Do you prepare their favorite meal for this time? Make a toast in their honor? be specific, like making something a memory table, or
Mhm.
maybe things you've come across since they died that you hadn't really acknowledged was significant for you or your family. Make a journal. Uh, maybe you haven't given any of their things away. Maybe this is the time to intentionally say, you know, share your feelings about it and do that intentionally. Um, do a charitable act in their honor. But yes, some people, you could go around the table and share, not before you eat maybe, but during the time, could say, we would love it if you have a memory that you want to share. You can say a prayer for the family left behind. I mean, you could do something like wear their favorite color. There's all kinds of things that you can do. I would say the main thing is to consider what would be meaningful to you. What do you think would really mean something to them, because they're watching you.
Mhm.
Yes.
A comment while we're waiting for other questions to come in. When you said a couple of times, pain and joy and sorrow being sisters,
Mm-hmm.
because we do know that often when we think about somebody we've lost, there is a joy because of a memory.
Yes.
It reminds us of the pain. Another thing that you mentioned, and I would welcome some comments from this, is what is it that you, the one that's dealing with the loss, what is it that's important to you to do during this season? That it's okay to claim that for yourself. I would like to, um, whatever that might be, whether it's a ritual or a meal or a family to do a certain thing that gives some thought to what you want. And I thought that was an extremely important point to make,
Yes. Yes.
because if you push it too far down the road, as you said in the very beginning, it will catch up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, as Sharon has weighed in, self-care, be gentle with myself and just adapt. And I would welcome for the rest of you to weigh in on chat. What are you currently doing to prepare for this, the losses that you're experiencing or you expect? What are you doing now that we could gain from, that we could learn what you're doing? If you
Yes.
could type that into the comments, not necessarily a question, but just a comment. What are you doing? Or what would you like to do that you've been reluctant to do?
Yes.
While we're waiting for those to come in, let me share an experience. I was doing a support group, caregiver support group at a church. And in December, one of the caregivers, her husband had been experiencing declining or increasing Alzheimer's disease. And she was very worried about what to do with the family because they had always hosted the family. And this particular year, she was feeling so overwhelmed by it. So the people in the group recommended to her, well, reach out to your kids. Don't keep it a secret. Reach out to them and be willing to have the courage to say, I need help. I need help this year.
Yeah.
So when we got back together in January, she could not wait till the session began to let us know what happened. She said the whole family agreed that it had been the best holiday celebration they'd had for Christmas dinner, because she had emailed all of her kids or called them and said what the situation were. And she said they took over.
Mm.
And she kept like the meat, but everybody else did something. And it was very much of a family holiday. And it helped her to really deal with the reality of what was in front of them.
Yes.
And that her family members, and it may not work with everybody, but if you can even get one person
Mhm.
to be part of that. But in her case, they said it was one of the best experiences, holidays they'd ever had, and they all had a hand in it. And she said what it meant for her too is that she gave her permission to start passing the baton
Mm. Yes,
to another generation.
yes.
Again, any of you want to share what your challenge is or what you're doing that has to do with loss and grief this year? Or do you need advice from Linda or one of the other listeners? Do you need some help in trying to figure it out? People may be reflective today. While we're waiting, or in case there are no other comments, Linda, if you could, this may be a difficult task, but could you summarize what you think are the most important aspects of dealing with grief and loss during the holidays? What would be your advice to summarize?
Yeah. Well, I think honestly, I think honesty with yourself and I mean, obviously self-care is huge, but acknowledging when something hurts, hopefully to someone else at times, but certainly with yourself. I think that we try so hard to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, that sometimes we need that reminder that none of us are able to handle everything by ourselves, and we shouldn't try to handle it by ourselves. So I think the awareness that pain brings healing primarily when it's really acknowledged.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for, as a chaplain and working in hospice, you've seen a lot of examples of the ambiguous grief and the anticipating grief, but also
Yes.
just the grief process. And
Yes.
how one of the comments you made also was, it comes out of nowhere sometimes.
Mhm.
You may be doing something completely unrelated and it just comes, and that's okay. And
Yes.
it's normal,
Yes.
and to just embrace it. And
Mhm.
if you want to sit alone with that, fine. But if you have a significant other or somebody you want to talk to about that, follow your own heart and your own instincts about that.
Yes.
Linda, thank you very much. And again, this webinar is going to be on YouTube by tomorrow. It'll be on our website, Family Caregivers Online. Again, we appreciate your time and effort that you put into sharing with us, especially in a difficult time of the year sometimes, I'm sure, for people
Yes.
in your business. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and take care of yourself this holiday. Remember to acknowledge it and
Yes.
be okay with whatever you need to do to cope, to find the joy, to find the sisters,
Yes.
find the joy in the sorrow.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.